Mom sold our dad's house to buy her new husband a boat. Now she's begging me for a place to stay after he left. Behind our backs, Mom sold our dad's house to purchase a yacht for her unemployed new husband, who later left her for someone else. She spent all the money and now begs to live with me. If that's the right description in this context, my 50F mother has had a pretty interesting life. My grandparents felt that women should take care of the home and family, so it was okay that she was never a good student. She still adheres to the same values that she was raised with. At the age of 20, 2 years after graduating from school, she married my dad. She gave birth to my older sister Jasmine, now 29F, when I was 21, and to me, Bianca, now 27F. 2 years later, Dad was always closer to my sister and me. He was quite supportive, although he didn't agree with Mom. He made it a point to always be there, enrolled us in a number of extracurricular activities, and pushed us to succeed academically. I enjoyed drawing, so Dad surrounded me with art tools. Dad also made sure my sister never missed a day of soccer practice since he saw her potential there. My mother was tremendously annoyed by the fact that he was constantly there for us. She disapproved of our pastimes. She disliked that we were intellectually minded, and as a result of our nature and Dad's encouragement, she actually lost a lot of respect in her family. We were disliked by my maternal grandparents in particular. When Dad died when I was 11, everything changed. He died a few days after being hospitalized following an automobile accident. My mother suffered a severe financial and emotional setback as a result, and naturally, so did the rest of us. We were done financially, but I don't want to discuss the mental turmoil we endured since it is irrelevant. We didn't have enough insurance to pay for the thousands of dollars Dad's hospital stay had cost. My mother had no savings of her own because she was unemployed, and the majority of his savings were used to cover the bills. I recall that we had to sell a lot of our belongings a few weeks following his passing. My sister stopped attending soccer practice. I sold my painting supplies, and we were assigned housework. I detested every aspect of my life's transformation, but since I was still reliant on my mother, there was nothing I could do about it. My paternal grandparents helped out at that point. They lived 3 states away, so we didn't see each other very often, so we had never been close, but they were always kind to me when I did see them. My grandfather was startled to learn that Mom had sold my belongings to make ends meet when he came to see us. He offered to pay for our interests and pastimes, but my mother rejected the idea, claiming she needed the money to support us rather than to finance our useless interests. She advised him to send money for power or groceries if he so desired. My grandfather became irritated and offered to cover the additional expenses if she worked to earn a living. She was in charge of making sure we survived, and he would only assist if she did her job. That's what happened when my mother said no. My mother was still receiving donations from family members and hadn't begun working at that time. Additionally, we had a lot of these handouts in some months and almost nothing in others. Our expenses were primarily covered by her parents. Because she sincerely believed that it was a man's job to provide, she flatly refused to find a job, claiming that the males in her family had a responsibility to support her. For several months, this continued, and her parents felt sorry for her and us, and they took care of us. However, that money suddenly stopped being received on a regular basis. Due to Mom's extreme financial hardship, Jasmine and I had to work to supplement our income. We could be seen at a neighbor's house every weekend, weeding their garden, strolling their dog, etc. Even though it was difficult, Mom didn't start working. When her parents finally had enough, they sat her down to have a conversation. They informed her that they could no longer provide for her and us since they had made plans for how they would spend their retirement years and could no longer afford to care for us. Mom was really surprised by this since she had thought that because Dad had passed away, her father should be responsible for looking after us because men provide. Given how my grandparents had brought her up, it was difficult to dispute with such reasoning. However, they were now shifting their position. According to them, the husband's role was to support his wife, and if he passed away, the wife would have to take care of the children. My mom and her sister had been informed that all of their possessions would pass to their brother, so they were effectively cutting her off. There was a lot of crying and name-calling during the confrontation, but my grandparents refused to back down. My mother sought assistance from Auntie Janice, her sister. Now, Auntie Janice loved us and was a wonderful woman. Although they didn't spend much time with us, her husband, a surgeon, was willing to assist. However, the amount of money we received from them was insufficient to sustain a family of 3. Mom then returned to my paternal grandparents. In exchange for my mom working, my grandfather was more than happy to assist. We couldn't have survived without their assistance, so she was forced to accept. Our lives had returned to normal after she secured a well-paying housekeeping position at a neighboring hotel. We were able to return to a comfortable lifestyle with the assistance of our grandfather and uncle. For the next 2 years, until I was 14 and my sister was 16, this arrangement persisted. Our mother introduced us to Dan at that point. Her new lover, Dan, was interested in marrying her. After just one glance at him, Jasmine and I felt repulsed. I'm not kidding when I say that he smelt and looked like a pig. It seemed like he hadn't taken a bath since high school. He had a lost expression on his face and smelled like cigarettes, as though he was unable to hear anything that was said to him. Needless to say, Jasmine and I harbored a deep hatred for him in addition to our disapproval. Regretfully, Mom professed to be deeply in love with him. Jasmine and I were pledged to silence, and they were married in a hush-hush ceremony. We had to keep Mom's second marriage a secret from Dad's side of the family. She was concerned that our grandparents would discontinue the monthly payments if they learned, and because it was a sizable sum, we truly couldn't have survived without it. Jasmine and I therefore said nothing. When Mom married Dan, I'm not sure what was going through her mind, but I believe she believed that if she married and had a guy in her life, she wouldn't have to work any longer and he would take care of everything. She quit her work and returned home a week after they were married, so I'm sure she assumed that. Dan's unemployment was the issue. It was a persistent one. He was only able to work for 2 months at a time, after which he would spend his time playing video games at home and only hunt for a new job when he became tired of them. This man didn't intend to support any of us, so all of Mom's dreams came crashing down. In order to get some spending money, Jasmine and I resumed working odd jobs for people. Therefore, my mother's sister's husband or my father's parents provided the majority of the family's income. To put it mildly, it was dysfunctional, and Jasmine and I were eager to go. We concentrated on school and our part-time jobs, avoiding contact with Mom and Dan. For the following 4 years, until I departed for college and stopped talking to Mom, this was the setup. Mom and Dan were having issues by the time I was about to leave. To be be honest, neither my sister nor I were surprised to learn that Dan was not just unemployed but also a chronic cheater. Things were messy, but mom continued ignoring them or forgiving him. After I started college, I stopped talking to my mother. My mother somehow always knew what was happening in my life since I kept in touch with my grandparents, aunt and uncle. I found a respectable career after graduating from college at the age of 23. The issue was that my promotions and raises were little because I graduated just before COVID. Life kind of stopped for a while because I was unable to save as much as I had hoped. The wonderful grandpa offered me some assistance, but I declined because I didn't want to burden him. Fortunately, I didn't lose my job, so I shouldn't be too upset. I received a significant pay increase and a promotion at work a few months ago. Since I had also saved money over the COVID years by living as cheaply as possible, this put me in a good position to purchase a modest home. Despite my goal of owning a home by the age of 25, I was content with the 2-year wait. I'm not sure how, but my mother discovered that I had purchased a home. She called me and said she had not seen her baby in a long time and wanted to meet up. Since I hadn't seen her since my last semester of college, I sensed something wasn't right. After that, neither she nor I had ever volunteered to meet. I promised to get back to her and let her know when I had some spare time. I had no intention of ever getting back to her. She went on to say that I had to notify her right away since it was essential. I excused myself and hung up the phone since I knew she was asking for something. She phoned me again 2 days later and said she needed my assistance since she was in a bit of a mess. She stated she had heard I had purchased a home and wanted me to allow her and Dan to move in before I could even consent. In essence, they wanted to live with me in my home. Her arrogance made me chuckle uncontrollably. I expressed to her my surprise that Dan was still alive and my wish that she had moved on from him. I informed her that, contrary to her assumption, I did not own a house. Rather, it was an apartment with a balcony, and the three of us could not possibly fit there. I hoped the size and space argument would be sufficient to dissuade her because I didn't want to explicitly tell her that I didn't want her there. I had been too optimistic though. She then informed me that I could leave the flat as it was only 1 bedroom, allowing her and Dan to move in together. I informed her that was not possible because I had put in a lot of effort to have someone else reside in my home. I also needed to pay off my mortgage. She lost it when I told her that I would rent her the going rate. She began yelling at me, claiming that she hadn't brought up her daughters to be such leeches, and that she couldn't believe I was renting for my own mother. She could go somewhere else to beg for crumbs, I told her, and I didn't have time for her or her yelling. I blocked her after hanging up. Jasmine told me she hadn't received a comparable call from mom when I contacted her. A month has passed since their last conversation, during which mom inquired about her residence. Jasmine informed her that she and her partner had moved in together and were saving money for a home. Why mom needed a place to stay in the first place was beyond me. Dan had moved in with us in our dad's old house, where we grew up, and she still owned it. I didn't understand why she felt the need to relocate so quickly. To inquire about the residence, I gave my paternal grandparents a call. I finally realized what was actually happening at that point. My grandfather's name was on the house where we were raised. When my grandparents died, it was technically meant to go to dad. It was agreed that my father and his brother, our uncle Liam, would each receive a house that belonged to my grandfather, allowing them to live there without paying rent. This was intended to provide them with a solid foundation in life and enable them to make real estate investments for their kids. Therefore, the deed to the house we grew up in was legally in my grandfather's name rather than my father's. My grandma insisted that grandpa keep the house in his name after dad passed away so that Jasmine and I could inherit it as adults. But grandpa didn't want to cause mom any more problems because she was unemployed. I believe he also felt sorry for her, which is why he gave my mother ownership of the house when she requested him to. This was done with the idea that the house would be delivered to us when Jasmine was 27 and I turned 25. I now think this is the reason mom warned us not to bring up the fact that she had married Dan. But soon, word spread. Grandpa claims that when they learned that she had remarried, they were angry because she had concealed it from them. At that point, they sought to transfer the house's ownership as quickly as possible. They insisted on finishing the papers to ensure that Dan and mom couldn't do anything with the house because Jasmine was an adult and I was almost one. However, mom cleverly informed them that Dan had moved on to someone else a few weeks after they had made their plans known. Her uncontrollable tears naturally caused my grandparents to give up on pursuing the ownership issue. They eventually forgot about it and it became less important. Since then, they had only sometimes communicated with her, and that was the last time they discussed the house with her. I informed grandpa that mom had called to express her desire to move in with Dan at my place. What had happened to dad's house, if such were the case? Since he was unaware that she had reconciled with Dan or that she was relocating, he indicated he would make an effort to learn more. This makes me uneasy, and I have a hunch that more drama will soon break out. Edit. To all of the commenters, I'm shocked that I was unaware of such significant information about my mother's life. This is what happens when you don't communicate with her. I don't regret my decision to shut her out of my life. I left the house and her life as soon as I reached 18, and ever since, I've been quite formal with her. I was unaware that Dan had left her and that he would return because of this. Jasmine and I were children, which is why we were unaware of the mansion. Both our grandparents and our mother were supposed to keep us safe. For this reason, the subject of real estate or home ownership was never discussed. We were minors at the time, and grandpa and grandma were dealing with our mother, who was meant to look after us, not defraud us, so they never considered talking to us about it. Jasmine and I are currently unaware of what transpired with dad's house, but we plan to ask mom and, if necessary, plan an intervention. I'll keep you all informed. Update 1. It's not good. Jasmine, her boyfriend, my grandparents, and I made the decision to meet with mom 2 weeks after my initial post in an attempt to find out what was going on. She was taken aback when we arrived because we had not informed her of our arrival. The finest aspect, a young couple opened the door when we arrived at our house, which was dad's house and the place we grew up in. They claimed to be the property's owners, but at first we assumed they were Dan's family or perhaps mom's acquaintances. They were telling the truth, but I didn't trust them, so I wanted to laugh. Without telling Jasmine or me or obtaining my grandparents' approval, mom had sold the house. It's also interesting to note that the sale took place more than 6 months ago. There is nothing we can do now because she secretly sold our house 6 months ago. Regretfully, she was the legitimate owner of the house and had the right to sell it because my grandparents never finished the paperwork and ownership transfer. Everyone is shocked by this, and we all feel deceived and repulsed. We made an effort to locate her residence. It was in a one-bedroom apartment in a seedy part of downtown, surrounded by junkies. I wasn't shocked to see that this was Dan's apartment because he seemed to be a junkie himself. Mom went white as a ghost when she saw us all standing together. We refused to let her shut the door as she attempted to do so. Fortunately, Jasmine's boyfriend, who is 6'4" and somewhat scary, was with us. Dan was sitting on the couch, smoking a cigarette and wearing a disoriented expression as we pushed our way inside. Mom gave us a tense greeting, but we immediately attacked. I informed her that Mom had sold Dad's house without telling Jasmine, me, or our grandparents, and that I knew it was meant for us. She started crying and claimed that Dan wouldn't have returned if she hadn't done it. She basically broke down in tears as she related how Dan had abandoned her twice for 2 separate women. Grandpa had truly departed when Mom told him Dan had left during their talk about the house. For him to return, she had to beg and plead. After being evicted from his new girlfriend's home, he eventually came back. Then, a year later, Mom discovered that he was having an affair with a girl who was just barely out of her teens. I simply stared at her as if she were crazy. When he was so troublesome and not supporting her in any manner, I questioned why she hadn't left him. I didn't have the patience to feel sorry for her, and she didn't respond to that. My grandmother was enraged. She yelled at her mother, telling her that she didn't want to hear justifications for her extreme failure. The house Jasmine and I were meant to live in was all that mattered to her. According to Mom, Dan wanted to purchase a yacht, so she sold the house. I don't know much about boats, but I do know that this man decided he wanted a boat after working as a coast guard at a beach a few miles away for a few months. If Mom didn't assist him in purchasing one, he threatened to abandon her once more. Thus, my mother, the world's greatest genius, sold her home and spent a portion of the proceeds to purchase a boat for this fool. She handed him the remaining funds rather than keeping them for herself. He used every last cent of it. He had to sell the yacht and purchase the apartment they were residing in when they had nothing left. And you know what? They detested it. Mom wanted to ask if I could allow her and Dan to remain with me because of this. When her story was over, she conceded defeatingly that she was certain I would no longer allow her to remain with me. Jasmine attacked her before I could respond, and wow, she was vicious. She enumerated the ways in which Mom had failed Dad as a wife and us as a mother. In order to support her uncaring husband, she had taken away the one thing that would have allowed us to remain connected to our father. She informed Mom that she would never hear from her again and that she was dead to her. I agreed with Jasmine, but I was still in shock and couldn't say much. I didn't want to do anything with my mom. Mom broke down in tears and said that she didn't deserve to be treated this way. We informed her that she did. Most significantly, she had deprived us of a link to our father in our early years. She had also stolen from our grandparents. We had no intention of ever forgiving her. We went out. She has since attempted to contact our grandparents and us, but none of us are able to get through to her. The money and property are permanently gone, and there is nothing we can do about the house. Although I realize it's a pipe dream and not really realistic, I'm thinking about accumulating money and purchasing it if it ever goes up for sale again, since I don't want to lose that aspect of my youth. My grandparents are devastated and incensed, but they are unable to help. We keep telling Grandpa that he couldn't have known she would do this, but he still curses himself for putting his trust in her. It's just a depressing situation, and we all feel powerless. Update 2. Dan departed from Mom once more. It may sound harsh, but I adore every aspect of it. Jasmine and I have not replied to her apparent attempts to contact us using new numbers and other means. She made an effort to include Aunt Janice. Last week, she called and asked me to speak with Mom. I told her everything and told her not to get involved. She was appalled as she was unaware that we were to inherit the house. She blocked her after apologizing for attempting to support Mom. The only information I received from Mom came from Auntie Janice, who informed me that Dan had abandoned her. Mom has nowhere to go and is now homeless. At first, Auntie Janice and her husband were open to taking her home, but they firmly objected after learning what Mom had done to us. Mom sent me an email yesterday. She essentially stated that she had nowhere to go, was homeless, and was down and out. She requested permission to live with me while she sought employment. She won't seek work, and if I take her in, she won't ever leave, so I know it's a lie. I feel awful about letting her live on the streets, but I also don't want her here, which is why I haven't replied yet. There just isn't anyone who would be willing to assist her. Even though I know she is solely to blame and that she caused this, I still feel bad for her. I know she will wreck my life if I give in, so I'm hoping I don't. Update 3. Jasmine said she received something similar after I told her about Mom's email. She acknowledged that she was secretly tempted to assist her but had not replied either. Since we both know Mom's personality, Jasmine informed me she would back my choice but that I give it careful thought. She will take over and ruin any tranquility I may have if I allow her inside. Thankfully, after a lengthy conversation, Jasmine made sense to me. In the end, I answered Mom. I sent her a lengthy email informing her that I would never, ever assist her. I vented all of my feelings, including disdain, hatred, wrath, and betrayal. I don't know if she has replied because I flagged her email as spam. I sent her the contact information for a few women's shelters that might be able to assist her, but that's all I'll do. She no longer deserves our assistance because she has been financially and emotionally irresponsible throughout our lives. I have requested Auntie Janice to keep me out of her affairs because I have no idea what she will do. I don't require her life updates. She was the worst part of my childhood and is no longer my mother. I'm prepared to let her go.